Hi. So the first time that I shot my lecture videos on Danto, I had a breakdown of his argument that I was not satisfied with when I got up this morning. So I have redone it and I'm going to reshoot this part of the video going over just like a sketch of Danto's argument, how I see this argument working. If you want like just the bare bones of what I think this argument is and what it looks like, then this is the video to watch. Um, this is not to say that this is the only way that you could kind of reconstruct Danto's argument, but this is the way that makes sense to me this time reading it. Okay, so Danto's argument. The argument is going to start off with two premises that just lay the groundwork for what he's going to say. The first one is the account he gives of what I'm going to call the rhetorical effect of beauty. So he thinks that generally speaking, beauty encourages a kind of passive or peaceful acceptance. It puts whatever has been beautified at a distance or in philosophical perspective. So this is really his idea of beauty as consolation. There are exceptions to this where beauty is used as a device for enhancing the appetite, in which case its rhetorical effect would be relishing the thing that's been presented to us. But in general, he thinks that the rhetorical effect of beauty is something like consolation. What do I mean by rhetorical effect? I mean the way that beauty makes us feel towards the content that's been presented. The second kind of groundwork premise that we need is Danto's definition of artistic excellence. So artistic excellence for Danto is a question of whether or not the artwork effectively achieves its apparent rhetorical aims. Whether or not it gets us to feel what it appears to be trying to get us to feel towards the content that it has. Is it trying to get us to feel like this is something wonderful and we should like it? In which case, it's probably been made beautiful or appealing in some way. Or is the aim to get us to feel repulsed and disgusted by the thing that's been shown to us, and then the style and the way that that content is presented would be different. So artistic excellence is a matter of looking at an artwork and assessing, what is this artwork trying to get me to feel towards this thing? What kind of attitude is this artwork suggesting I take up towards this content? And then how successful is the artwork at getting me to do that? I'm going to set aside for now questions of how much the artist's actual intentions might influence our idea of what the artwork is trying to do, what its rhetorical aims are. That's like a rather large question in philosophical aesthetics that I'm going to sort of set aside. So, but I'm going to talk about it usually, since we don't usually have the artist kind of right there telling us what their rhetorical aims were. We're reading those rhetorical aims off of the artwork itself. And when you look at images and artworks, sometimes it might not be clear what they're going for, and that might itself be a kind of aesthetic failing or a benefit, depending on one's point of view. But a lot of the time, we can kind of tell by the way things are being presented to us, how they are framed, how they are, the expressive quality of the way they've been presented, what kind of attitude the work would like us to take. Alright, so now that we've got those two kind of groundwork premises in place, the next step of the argument is to point out that beauty has been optional in art since at least post-impressionism, and that means that its presence or absence cannot contribute to assessments of artistic excellence before we know what the purpose of it being beautiful is. So before we can know if beauty makes the work better or worse, we have to think about what the thought of the work is, as Danto puts it, what its rhetorical aims are, as I've been describing it. What is it trying to get us to feel towards its content? So the next premise, if the content or aims of the artwork are internally connected to beauty, the beauty of the work will contribute to its artistic excellence. If not, then beauty might be irrelevant to the excellence of the work, or it might even detract from it if the content of the artwork is incompatible with beauty, or if we sense that the aims of the artwork are incompatible with beauty. The next step of the argument, I just want to look more closely at what we mean by there being an internal connection between beauty and the content of the work. What does Danto mean by this? And there are two main possibilities that I want to pull apart and think about how they relate. So the first one is that beauty could be internally connected to the artwork's rhetorical aims, what it is trying to get us to feel towards its content. It could appear, for instance, possibly in part because of its beauty, that the work is inviting us to enjoy the content it shows or to be consoled in relation to it. If the artwork appears to aim at evoking some other kind of attitude, say outrage or disgust, the presence of beauty might be a distraction or strike a false note. It might get in the way of the artwork's apparent aims. We could say in such cases that beauty is not internally related to the aims of the rhetorical aims of the work. It doesn't seem to be part of what the work or the artist is going for. So that's the first way. Beauty could be internally connected to the artwork's rhetorical aims. Secondly, beauty could be internally connected to the moral content of the work. So once we see what the artist/artwork aims to do with beauty, what attitude is being promoted towards its content, we can make a moral judgment. Should this content be made beautiful? Should the attitude of relish or consolation be applied to the topic of this work? It may be that an artist aims to get us to relish something morally troubling, for instance, by making it beautiful. In that case, beauty would be internally connected to the artwork's rhetorical aims. It isn't a mistake that the work is beautiful, or that the beauty is there. That's what part of what the artist and the artwork are trying to do. But beauty would not be internally connected to the moral content of the work. In fact, in that case, beauty could be incompatible with that moral content. If we think that this content, morally speaking, calls for, say, direct action to intervene in an injustice or something like that, rather than the attitude of consolation or relish promoted by beauty. So we can always evaluate artistic excellence of an artwork in terms of how well it carries out its apparent rhetorical aims. Does it get us to feel the thing it seems to be trying to get us to feel towards X? Danto seems to suggest that we can also employ the second moral assessment in our evaluations of artistic excellence. Not only could we say that the works of the 1993 biennial were excellent for lacking beauty because that suited their artists' actual rhetorical aims, we could also say that those rhetorical aims, which are at odds with beauty, were artistically right given the moral content of these works. Artistically, there would have been some dissonance between this kind of content, about racial injustice, about domestic violence, say, and the rhetorical aim of soothing us into accepting things just as they are, or relishing them for that matter. Okay, next step. So in light of all of the above, I take Danto to be arguing that it would be artistically wrong in both ways, out of step with the artist's actual aims and out of step with the artistic aims allowed by or compatible with the moral content of these works, for the artworks of the 1993 Whitney Biennial to have been made beautiful. And the conclusion is that beauty would not contribute to the artistic excellence of artworks whose content calls for direct outrage and action on moral grounds. Okay, that's the nutshell version of the argument that I'm happy with at the moment. We can talk more about this argument if you would like, on the Discord channel or in the online discussion group on Friday, and one-on-one if you like, if you're thinking about writing your paper on Danto.